Texas football loses its second consecutive game, Texas volleyball continues their dominance in Big 12 play, and we look at the most underrated players in college football. All this and more coming up on College Press Box. Good evening and welcome into this week's edition of College Press Box from the TSTV studio in Austin, Texas. I'm your host, Harrison Chiu, joined alongside Zach Gueck. Zach, how are you doing?
I'm awesome. I'm excited.
That's good, man. Now, we have a lot of coverage to unpack, so let's start with Saturday's football game between the Texas Longhorns and undefeated Oklahoma State Cowboys. Following Texas's loss to OU, Coach Steve Sarkisian and his Longhorns needed a win against Coach Mike Gundy's Cowboys to keep them on track for a Big 12 title appearance. Could Sark and his team rebound after the difficult loss? Let's head down to Darrell K. Royal Stadium to find out. Okay. Thompson flips it to Keelan Robinson, the Alabama transfer, for a 25-yard gain. It's a great start for the Texas offense. Same drive. Under center, Thompson hands it off to Bijan Robinson for 6. Perfect start for the Longhorns. Now later in the quarter, Thompson finds Marcus Washington, who's filling in for the injured Jordan Whittington, who goes all the way to the Cowboys' 11-yard line. Now Thompson gets popped, but not before he finds Bijan Robinson open in the flat for his second touchdown of the game. Spencer Sanders, trying to generate some offense, misses a throw, who gets picked off by senior defensive back Deshaun Jameson, but not until Casey Thompson gets his own interception. Pick 6 by Taylor. He takes it 72 yards. It was just what Oklahoma State needed. Now in the third quarter, the game is close at 17-13 until Bijan goes for 38 yards on a run for his third touchdown of the game. That is a play you see on Sundays. Texas up 24-13, but now 8-point game. Sanders finds his receiver for a touchdown. It's a 2-point game, but then when he goes for 2, Jalen Ford comes up big on the stop, and here we go. Down 1, Texas intentionally letting Sanders in for the touchdown to give time to the offense. Thompson now on the last drive, he gets picked off in a heartbreaking fashion. Texas loses the game, and Texas fans, well, they choked another one. Some statistics from the game. Thompson had 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions. Bijan had his 6th 100-plus yard game of the season with 135 yards. And Marcus Washington led the way receiving with 60 yards. Oklahoma State, Spencer Sanders went off for 178 yards with 2 total touchdowns but an interception. But the real offensive statistic that matters is Jalen Warden. With 33 carries for 193 yards, Oklahoma State takes this one as they stay undefeated in the Big 12 Conference. For more in-depth coverage on Saturday's game, let's switch it over to Ceci Rodriguez, who is on the sidelines for this Big 12 matchup.
Texas hosted the Oklahoma State Cowboys last Saturday in Austin. It was their first game back since the devastating second-half loss to Oklahoma at the Cotton Bowl a week before. Hoping to rectify that loss, the Longhorns started this game strong on both sides of the ball, competing at a high level against the number 12 ranked Cowboys. This tide was easily changed towards the end of the third quarter and ultimately led to another loss at the hands of poor second-half playing. The Longhorns are trying to figure out how to improve their second-half slump in big games as this season and conference play continues. Texas needs to take control of their game plan and win out as many games as possible going forward. Coach Steve Sarkisian explains that
we've got a great challenge ahead of us to get us to play to our capability.
Quarterback Casey Thompson says that the team,
but as a unit, we just, like I said, every person and every individual just has to focus on, doing my job the very best that I can.
Josh Thompson says that this week the team needs to
make sure we come out Monday, get ready for practice, and get ready for Baylor.
Bijan Robinson says,
we just need to, like I always say, we just can't look at the scoreboard. We just need to understand that we just need to keep executing, understanding what our job is, our focus is.
As for improvement, Coach Sarkisian says,
There's some things we need to work on mentally from a psyche standpoint for us to be the team that I know we're capable of being.
Welcome to Darrell K. Royal Texas Memorial Stadium, where the Texas Longhorns are once again stunned, but this time at home. Coach Sarkisian said that while the team is capable of executing on the field and winning big games, they need to be mentally and physically prepared for adversity when things don't go their way. The Longhorns still have a tough schedule up ahead. We will see what their future holds. With TSTV Sports, I'm Cecilia Rodriguez.
Now joining us to break down Texas's game versus Oklahoma State is Jason Kinander. Happy to have you, Jason.
Always a pleasure, Zach.
So, we know Texas blew another double-digit lead in a loss to Oklahoma State at home, 24-32. What went wrong for Texas, and what should they work on in this upcoming bye week?
Well, you know, Zach, for the second consecutive week, Texas carved themselves out a big lead in the first half, only to cough it up and lose in heartbreaking fashion. The real turning point for me, at least, was Casey Thompson's pick six late in the second quarter. Texas had all the momentum at that point, only to give it all away with one throw. At the stadium, you could feel the momentum shift to the Cowboys, and their third quarter attack allowed them to stretch that momentum out throughout the remainder of the game. Texas had problems getting the ball to Xavier Worthy, who was coming off of a massive game against Oklahoma. Could see that Jordan Whittington being out really was a big impact, and the offense seemingly stopped attacking after halftime for what seems like every game this season.
Yeah, outscored and out-yardaged in the second half yet again. So, who stood out to you from Texas?
Well, no surprise, Bijan Robinson with another huge game, totaling 3 touchdowns. At this point, really the only thing in the way of Bijan winning the Heisman Trophy is the performance of Texas as a team. On the defensive side, Deshaun Jameson had an interception and 5 tackles. The linebacking was really good for most of the game. Jalen Ford had the big game-saving at the time tackle on the first 2-point try for Oklahoma State. Luke Brockermeyer also led the way tackling. It was another tough loss featuring another blown lead, so you can't take away too much on the positive end, but at the very least for Texas football and for the fans, Bijan Robinson continues to show up every single Saturday.
Yeah, Bijan is definitely still doing his thing, and the defense did pretty well, didn't allow an offensive touchdown until the third quarter in the game, so not doing too bad on defense. So, do you still think that Texas even has a chance in the Big 12 or to go to the Big 12 championship?
Unfortunately, Zach, I do not. Even if the Longhorns win out, they would finish conference play at a 7-2 mark, needing Oklahoma or Oklahoma State to rack up 3 losses in the final 5 or so weeks of the season. So honestly, following this loss, the focus for Coach Sarkisian in Texas should shift to developing players for next season. Giving Xavier Worthy the ball as much as possible is imperative in order to up his production next season as a sophomore. Some of the young defensive players need to step up with a lot of overturn coming with the seniors and juniors on the defensive end. So I'm sure Texas and the entire organization didn't envision the season being quote-unquote over as early as it is, but at the very least there are some positives and some young guys that have produced at this point in the season and will look to continue to produce leading into next season.
Awesome. Great stuff, Jason. I appreciate it. When we come back, we take a look at Texas volleyball's continued success against TCU. We'll be back on College Press Box. Welcome back to College Press Box. Let's take a look over at how Texas volleyball played against TCU. In the second game of 2, a kill by Asia O'Neal from Jenny Gabriel for Texas. Here we have a service ace by Asia O'Neal. And then here we have a good kill by Breon Butler. Then we have another good kill here by Skylar Fields for Texas. Texas takes the first set 13-25. Now, in the second set, Logan Eggleston gets the kill for Texas. A back and forth game. TCU's Mackenzie Nichols with the kill. good back and forth play, but Texas will take the second set 14-25. And in the third set, they take the set 22-25 with kills by Logan Eggleston and Asia O'Neal, winning all 3 sets in the second meeting to go 2-0 against TCU.
Now we bring in our volleyball analyst, Emme Basnett. Emme, how's it going?
It's going pretty well. How are you?
Oh, that's good. I'm doing well. This past weekend, Texas volleyball pulled off their second straight sweep against TCU. What is this team doing so well?
Well, this team is pretty dominant, and I want to first note their record right now as they are 15-0, and they are 6-0 in Big 12 play, earning them a #1 NCAA #1 ranking. So this team has a lot of hype, which isn't really new for Texas volleyball, but it's still something that I really wanted to mention because I think that it's they're pulling off a really record-breaking season. Specifically against the Horned Frogs, the Longhorns were able to minimize service errors. That has been a problem in the past at the service line. And I think with the last match, they pulled away 11 aces. This is an area in which the Horns have struggled, and it's been a crucial improvement for them, and that's what the coach has been saying, that service errors need to be minimized going forward because that just sucks for the team. They were also able to hold their own against TCU's hitting percentage. They held them to 0.096, which marks the 3rd straight match which this team has been able to hold another team to a hitting percentage below 0.1%. So overall, just increased dominance at that service line and then holding and minimizing hitting percentages of the opposing teams.
No, absolutely. Volleyball teams are up to what matters is service and their defense. And Texas volleyball right now is looking good, especially in the Big 12 play. And this is a very veteran-heavy team with a lot of notable amount of individual talent. Who has stood out to you on this team?
No surprise here, but I have to say Logan Eggleston just because she continues to dominate, especially in the Big 12. Just last weekend, she had 10 kills, 4 blocks, and 2 aces against TCU. She also recorded a season high of 21 kills against Texas A&M in September. Then we have another standout, junior hitter Skylar Fields, who also has had an impressive performance against TCU with 8 kills and 3 blocks. Then I would have to say Breon Butler and Jenna Gabriel. They are very 2 consistent veteran players on the team. Breon had a season high of 15 kills against Kansas, and junior setter Jenna with a whopping 57 assists also against Kansas. So needless to say, this team does not lack in the talent department.
Absolutely. There is no lack of talent on this team. And with the rest of the season still ahead of them, what would you say is the biggest challenge for this Texas team?
Okay, so the next game they play is in Ames, Iowa against Iowa State. So obviously there's that lack of home court advantage going on, but Texas has been able to be consistently victorious over these Cyclones in the past. So I would say, and not this next game is their biggest challenge, but Baylor has to be, especially since they will play them in Waco. The Horns were able to win all 4 of their last 4 matchups against Baylor last season, but don't count them out. They have a pretty impressive front row. Somebody I got to shout out is Big 12 player Yosiana Presley, who led the country in kills last year with a total of 488. But honestly, I know this is a really cliche point and people do this all the time, but I think their biggest opponent going forward is really just themselves, and then the coach agrees. And while they're able to clinch wins anyways, their passing game has just been off. So going forward, if they want to continue their perfect record, they're going to have to get out of their own heads and not get too comfortable with their ranking.
Absolutely. Most successful teams who end up winning the national championship, they have to stay in the moment and not look too forward in the future. So when we come back, Clark Dalton talks about the hidden gems of college football. You won't want to miss it. Welcome back into College Press Box. We've got Clark Dalton here. I understand Clark has a list of the most underrated players in college football, so let's transition to Unhooked.
Thanks, Zach and Harrison. Now, college football rosters are loaded with superstars these days, ranging from wide receivers who make one-handed catches look easy, running backs who sprint like a streak of lightning, safeties who make hits that sound like thunder, and defensive tackles who make the ground rumble as they chase down quarterbacks. With so many great players, it's easy for some guys to fall through the cracks into the cavern of underrated players. Well, today we're diving into that abyss, bringing these players into the limelight. It's time for the 4 most underrated players in college football. Now, these are in no particular order because all 4 of these guys are so good, it's simply too hard to put them in any order. Let's get into it.
Alec Pierce. Cincinnati developed into an elite program over the past few seasons thanks to the improvement of Desmond Ridder. You can thank Alex Pierce for that. Pierce is a 6'3" monster who can catch any ball thrown his way thanks to his leaping ability and reach. Now, he doesn't have as many catches as a Chris Olave, but don't be fooled. This is due to Cincinnati being an old school offense that doesn't throw the ball 400 times a game. He averages over 18 yards per catch, which is better than Olave or Garrett Wilson. Still not convinced? Just watch his game against Notre Dame, where he burned one of the best secondaries in the country with 6 catches, 144 yards, and a touchdown. Sean Tucker. Way back in the day, Syracuse was known for producing great running backs, Jim Brown, Ernie Davis, and Floyd Little. Sean Tucker brought the dormant legacy back to life. Tucker runs like a small wrecking ball through defenses, averaging 6 yards per carry. The Orange are only 6 games into the season, and he's nearly at the 1,000-yard mark. He's currently second in the country in total rushing yards. Keep in mind, he's only a redshirt freshman, so he's a bright future ahead. Now, unfortunately, Syracuse just isn't very good, so he doesn't get as much recognition. But if he were at Alabama, trust me, he'd be a marquee star. Kyle Hamilton. If Kyle Hamilton is a top 5 pick this year, don't be surprised. He's one of the most talented safeties we've seen in years. Hamilton brings an uncanny combination of speed and ball tracking ability to the table, which annoys any offensive coordinator. In his first game ever, he intercepted a pass taking it 34 yards to the end zone. Since then, his star has continued to rise. Last year, when he finally won the starting job, Notre Dame's passing defense saw immediate improvements, which resulted in a college football playoff appearance. Hamilton is dominating again this year. He's currently on the top 10 list in total interceptions and has a chance to become an All-American. Jordan Davis. Georgia is the best defense in college football. The heart and soul is Jordan Davis. Now, Davis is a defensive tackle, so he doesn't rack up sacks, but if he wasn't, trust me, he would. At the line of scrimmage, he's basically a great white shark munching sardines, wreaking havoc in the backfield. Despite his tremendous size, he's a weird knack for blocking kicks. Also, he shows great pursuit every single play. All of these elements help his teammate raise their games. They say if it weren't for him, they wouldn't be a national title contender. Head coach Kirby Smart says he's just Godzilla-like.
Now that's a wrap, but if you have any players that you think deserve more attention, hit me up on Twitter and Instagram. My Insta is Clark1800. That's shameless plug. We're not supposed to do that, but got to get TSTV some growth. Also, one more thing to keep in mind. I think sometimes we can be a little hard on some players saying, oh, he's not that good, for reasons that are honestly quite superficial. It could be size, speed, mannerisms, whatever. But I challenge that notion because I think there are so many good athletes in team sports that it's easy for them to be underappreciated and not get the credit they deserve. Trust me, all these individuals need is talent, which they have, the right foundation around them, and a chance to show what they can really do. When they get this opportunity, they truly shine. That's it for me. Back to Zach and Harrison.
When we come back, we head over to Chiu Stadium for World Cup soccer. You won't want to miss it. Welcome back to College Press Box. Team USA played in a World Cup qualifying match against Jamaica in Austin's Q2 Stadium on Thursday. For more on that, we head to Q2 Stadium with TSTV's Jaxie Pidgeon.
Soccer fans worldwide traveled to Austin to watch the U.S. men's national team and Jamaica qualify for the 2022 FIFA World Cup at Q2 Stadium, home to Austin FC. Mo Paquette made a 2,000-mile trip to cheer on his squad.
I'm from Vermont. This is game number, I think, 17 for me.
The first was in Scotland in 2013. Flash forward, he is now vice president of his local chapter of the American Outlaws, AO for short, which is a soccer support group. At every match, he connects with people nationwide.
Slowly, you go to more and more, you meet more and more people. It's a great way to kind of travel the country and the world.
It brought an estimated 20,500 people to Austin.
With the work that U.S. Soccer has done to kind of put it in some smaller venues to try and localize U.S. supporters, that shows their trust in Austin to be able to show out.
Here inside a packed Q2 stadium, Team USA has just scored its second goal and the fans are loving it. Austin is getting the ball rolling for international soccer in Texas, with Houston and Dallas both being potential host sites for the 2026 World Cup.
I have no doubt that people are going to see this game and want to come to Austin because of it. When we can attract the men's national team in this case, it's only going to set up for future success.
I think it's definitely cool to get into new markets and, again, all about growing the game, get it to a place that's never hosted qualifiers.
With a sellout crowd at Q2, fans are already looking forward to more top-tier soccer matches in the future. In Austin, Jaxie Pidgeon, TSTV Sports.
The Texas soccer team traveled to Waco to take on the Baylor Bears last Friday. They ended up with a tie at 0-0 even after 2 overtime periods. Number 25 Texas extends their streak of being unbeaten to 9 games, remaining on top of the Big 12 conference standings.
Texas softball stays undefeated in fall games, going 5-0 now after beating Texas A&M in a 10-inning game 8-6. Sophomore catcher Bree Cantu and senior left fielder Lauren Burke had the 2 clutch hits in the 10th to put the Longhorns up. Burke went 1 for 4 with a walk and a double and 2 RBIs, while Cantu was 1 for 3 with 3 RBIs.
Women's golf went to Stanford this past weekend, competing in the Stanford Intercollegiate. The 7th-ranked golf team Texas Longhorns finished in a tie for 6th place, while senior Sarah Kuskova finished 2nd individually. After being in 16th place after Friday's opening round of a 303, Texas had rounds of 277 and 278 and 2 and 3, which Texas finished 6 over par but showed lots of fight this week, said head coach Ryan Murphy.
The Texas men's basketball team starts the 2021-2022 season ranked at number 5 in the AP poll, which was released Monday or today. This is the highest preseason ranking the Longhorns have had since the 2009 to 2010 season, when they started at number 3, and their highest ranking that they have started with under a new head coach. Needless to say, there are high expectations for the men's basketball team this season.
This week in Longhorn sports, on Thursday, Texas volleyball goes on the road against Iowa State at 6:30 p.m. on Big 12 Now. Soccer hosts West Virginia Thursday at 7 p.m. on Longhorn Network. On Saturday, softball has a doubleheader against Temple College and UTSA starting at 12 p.m., then playing its second game against UTSA at 2:30. Both games will be live on Longhorn Network as well. Finally, on Sunday, soccer plays Oklahoma here in Austin at 1 p.m. on Longhorn Network.
And that is going to do it for this week's episode of College Press Box. Make sure to tune in to College Crossfire Wednesday at 9 p.m. and the 1-0 Sports Show Friday morning at 10. Also, make sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at TSTV Sports. I'm Zach Gueck. He's Harrison Chiu. And from everyone in the studio and in Master Control, we say thank you for watching and have a good night.